like to call the meeting to order.
I'm missing out on that.
Calling the meeting to order. We're starting the meeting. So, would you please join me in a moment of silence? Do we have a flag? Did you bring up the flag, Tom?
Oh, that would be Peter.
Okay, if you can make me the presenter, I've got the flag here.
He's got it, Frank.
Okay, let's see here. I forgot how to do that. How do I make you? How did I make you the presenter? Here it is. Okay, make host. I'll make you co-host.
Okay.
All right, there you go.
Okay, so let's see. I still, do you see the flag?
No.
Not yet.
See.
Hit
Do I have to
screen
accept?
share. Hit screen share and then hit share when you're in the picture.
Okay. How was that again?
Hello?
Tom, could you explain that? Okay, that's okay. All right. I'll tell you what. I'm just going to turn this around here like this. Can you all see the flag?
Yeah.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. It may be backwards, but anyway.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you.
So are our speakers here, Tom, or?
Yes, Greg Meyers here. Hi, Greg. How are you doing today?
And Mary, are you ready to introduce Mary?
Yes.
Okay.
I can introduce Representative Meyer. Our speakers today, we are supposed to have three from the North Carolina State General Assembly, and they are going to tell us what is currently happening in the assembly and what to expect in the next session. We are especially interested in those issues that apply to federal employees, federal annuitants, and older citizens of North Carolina. And now to introduce Representative Meyer. He is a Democratic member of the North Carolina General Assembly. He represents the 50th District, which includes Orange and Caswell counties. He has held the office of North Carolina State Representative since 2013. So I turn it over to Representative Meyer.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, everyone. I am glad to be joining you on this morning. I'm on the tail end of a vacation right before we get back to legislative session and right before we get into election season. It's going to be an intense time through the fall. We are going back for a very brief legislative session on September 2nd and 3rd, 2 days only by our adjournment resolution. That could always change. We can't change the rules, but supposedly for 2 days only. And there really were supposed to be two purposes of what we were going back for. The first was to spend the rest of the CARES funds that we have from the federal government for coronavirus relief. We have somewhere between $500 million and $900 million to be spent. I know that seems like a wide range. It's because there is not agreement on what the terms are of that. And so I think that leadership in the General Assembly is waiting for guidance from the feds for how we're going to be able to spend that money and what we're going to, how much we'll be allowed to spend. We did not get the support that we wanted from the federal government in terms of a second relief package, which would have made it possible for us to spend a significantly larger amount of money, particularly on healthcare and education. We also don't have flexibility that we hope for from the federal government that would allow us to do revenue replacement for local governments or even for state revenue loss because of the way the economy's been hit by COVID. And the second purpose that we were supposed to come back for was that when we pushed the income tax deadline from April 15th to July 15th, we believe that that meant that by now we would have the ability to have a sense of how much revenue we were going to have for the next fiscal year and to make adjustments to our budget. But our fiscal staff tells us that although we know that revenues are going to be down, we don't know exactly how much. We don't have those numbers back. And so we may have to come back one more time this year, either to respond to our final revenue numbers or to appropriate money from an additional federal relief package. So while we were supposed to be done for the biennium on September 3rd, I have a feeling we might come back, appropriate those couple $100 million that we have left to appropriate, and then adjourn until a time in October, or if we do adjourn for the year, wait for the governor to call us back in special session if and when that second package comes down from the federal government. I think that there's some significant things to be concerned about and where we are with COVID response and our budget overall right now. We know that our revenues are down. We don't know how much. We have several $billion in rainy day funds or unreserved balances, but we have not spent any of that money yet because we've been trying to use the federal dollars. And the Republican leadership has been unwilling to tap into the state reserves, even when things happen like we have. We've seen the federal unemployment insurance benefits expire, and we have not had any action to replace any of those benefits with North Carolina benefits. And we have some of the lowest unemployment benefits in the nation already in North Carolina. We could do so much more with the money that we have on reserve at this point. And we have a specific reserve fund for unemployment insurance that we still haven't tapped into either. What else? You wanted to know specifically about federal employees and retirees and aging adults. I don't know that there's anything in particular in what we're going to do in September for federal employees or retirees. I do think that there is some attention being paid to aging adults because of the impact of COVID. Obviously, there's been specific attention paid to outbreaks in nursing homes, and there definitely is some attention being paid in terms of how the Department of Health and Human Services responds to contact tracing and testing of older adults. I think older adults have easier access to the testing that we have. We still have limited testing. I'm happy to talk about any of the other things that might happen in the session. I would also remind you, as I'm sure you need no reminding, that with the election looming, whatever we do when we go back next week will be impacted by people with one eye onto the election and what might look good to voters as we head towards November. I'm happy to talk about any election questions you have as well. So that's an introduction. I'd love to see what people want to know about and answer any questions.
Carolyn, you need to unmute.
This is Jane Caldwell. I have a question. If you can hear me. What are you doing about the election integrity and funds that need to be directed toward North Carolina election protection?
Great question, Jen. We actually, when we were in session earlier this year, we did a bipartisan election bill that I think was one of the best bipartisan things that we've done in my time in the General Assembly. It wasn't perfect. It had some things that I think could have been better in it, some other things we could have done. But in terms of appropriating money for this year's elections, it did make sure that we will have enough money to fully staff polling places, including early voting, and do the polling in a way that we should have plenty of social distancing space within polling places. The State Board of Elections has also taken action to increase the number of early voting polling places so that there will be fewer people going to each early voting place and therefore allowing you to have a little bit more distance inside of each polling place. And then there's money in there as well for election security. So I actually feel relatively confident about election security in North Carolina. There's some other specific things I can talk about that we did in that legislation. I continue to be a little bit worried. We still have some counties in North Carolina that use electronic voting machines. I wish we had switched entirely to paper ballots. That's one thing that we didn't do. But other than that, I think that the State Board of Elections has done a lot to address the major concerns that we've seen from other states around election security.
Just as a follow-up, I see that North Carolina is joining 6 other states in suing the postal office for the stuff that's been done with the post office. Do you want to comment on that and any action items for the legislature in that way?
So that's Attorney General Stein taking action. I doubt the legislature will take any action on the Postal Service because we have a Republican-controlled legislature and they're not likely to challenge anything that the Trump administration is doing on any fronts, including on the Postal Service. So Attorney General Stein's action, I think, is probably the best we can hope for out of North Carolina. On the political side, our advice to folks is if you are going to return a ballot by mail, that you do so in plenty of time, do so early. And the State Board of Elections has set up a portal. I don't know if it's already set up because ballots don't go out until September 3rd and 4th. But once your ballot has been sent to you, you will be able to log in and check and see whether it has been returned and accepted. And based on a ruling by a North Carolina court, if for any reason your ballot was not accepted, maybe you filled it out wrong, you didn't sign it, you didn't have a witness, etc., you do have the ability to work with the Board of Elections to correct your ballot before Election Day. So if you are going to vote by mail, you should certainly take advantage of that and make sure that your ballot was accepted and your vote was counted. I think because of concerns about the Postal Service, we're encouraging people to turn them in early, as I said. And if you do request an absentee ballot, you don't have to return it by mail. You can return it by hand to any early voting site or to your county board of elections, including on the day of election. You can return it to the county board of elections. If you've not returned your ballot by the day of election, you do have to go to your polling place and cast a ballot in person on the day of election. But up through the early voting period, you can turn your ballot in person if you choose to do so.
Okay, Greg, I have a question about that. This is Nancy Mayer. The question I have about that is that to return it in person, you have to return it in person, you have to actually step into the polling area and sign some kind of logbook, and they have to check you out before you can return it in person, which means if you're going to go into the voting area and wait online to return your absentee ballot, you sort of voided the area. Now, some states have drop boxes in or near early voting areas so that you can just drop it into the drop box and not have to go into the voting enclosure. Has anything been started in North Carolina to make that happen?
So I've heard some discussion of that, and it really would be an action that the State Board of Elections or County Board of Elections would take. And I have not heard that they are going to create drop boxes, but I think it's still possible. So you may want to contact your County Board of Elections or your State Board of Elections to ask for that.
The County Board has told us to contact the State Board of Elections on this.
They've been very
explicit. So everybody hear that. If you want to have a drop box and not have to go into the enclosure to turn in your absentee ballot, please contact the State Board of Elections and ask them to set it up.
I think you can also turn in your ballot at curbside voting at any early voting place that has a curbside pull-up as well.
Oh, that would be interesting. I haven't heard that, but it makes sense. I don't know if that's for sure, but if it is, it would be helpful.
Yeah, I've actually heard mixed things about that, so I don't want to declaratively say that it's true, but the person who I trust, out of the people I asked, the person who I trust the most to know told me that he thought that would be possible. I think when you go to curbside voting, you have to sign an affidavit that says that you do have a disabling condition, but I mean, if you're over 65 and you're in the time of COVID, you probably could sign that affidavit without much second thought.
This is Dave Sherman. One thing for people in Durham to be careful of is I learned over the weekend from a friend that the Durham Board of Elections has a drop box outside of their building. And he went over the weekend and dropped in his absentee ballot application and said he was intending to leave his ballot the same way. And And I and one other person said, no, you better check into that. And he called, and Durham Board of Elections told him it was okay that he dropped his application in there, but it seemed perhaps to be conditioned on them saying that the office was closed to the public for some reason this week. But in any case, they said that was okay. But they told him as of now, and I hope that they put some sign up there to keep people from doing it, do not drop your completed ballot in that drop box.
That's a good tip.
I've got a question for you. If you start to run, you mail in your ballot and you have problems with it, and time starts to run out, can you stop that process and go directly to the polls and vote?
I know you can vote on election day if your ballot hasn't been received yet. I don't know if you can vote at an early voting place if you've already requested an absentee ballot. I think your better move in that case would be to take your absentee ballot and turn it in at the early voting place. I just don't know the details on that. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you.
I was wondering if you could tell us the status of the extension of the Bailey settlement.
It has not come up in the last 2 years in the legislature. I mean, as you can imagine, this year was a really bizarre year where we were pretty focused on COVID response. But the last time I remember debating that was in the previous session, so there really hasn't been any action on it this year. I sit on the Finance Committee, which is where we would have to pass that extension, and if it did come up this year, I just don't remember. I'm sorry.
Mr. Meyer, this is John Alice. I'm the state legislative officer, and because of the COVID episodes here, the fourth branch has not been active in pushing the Bailey settlement for this session, but I anticipate that we'll be back with you when the next session starts after the elections. So just don't want anybody to forget about the fact that we are still interested in it.
Well, I hope that after the elections, either myself or one of my colleagues on the one of my Democratic colleagues on the Finance Committee will be chairing the committee, and we'd be happy to meet with you and maybe have a different approach to it than our predecessors have had.
That would be great. I know the Finance Committee has been the roadblock the last couple of times.
I'm very much looking forward to new leadership on finance and many other committees.
We hope so.
Greg, this is Tom Lynn. I was wondering if there are any sort of late-breaking openings in any of the seats that, we don't know about, maybe people that resigned or were in car wrecks or I don't know what.
Well, the big news is that House Rules Chairman David Lewis last week accepted a plea with federal prosecutors for illegal use of campaign funds. And so he has resigned and taken that guilty plea. So that's not a seat that is likely to flip hands just because of the Democratic and Republican makeup. But there's certainly been a number of incidents that have happened over the last couple of years where Republicans have ended up in trouble with the feds, including the indictments of Greg Lindbergh for bribery and former Republican Party chair Robin Hayes for being involved with that bribery scandal. And actually, some people don't remember that David Lewis is the second Republican House Rules Chair to accept or to have federal charges brought against him in the last decade. Earlier in the decade, I think around 2012, Stephen LaRoque also had federal charges brought against him. So not a very good track record on that. But in terms of the seats that are the most competitive this year, I don't think there's been any major changes. in terms of who's running or what the stakes are. This is going to be a really, really close election. I mean, you all know that North Carolina is one of the closest states in the country, and that's true statewide. But even if presidential or gubernatorial candidate wins by 3 to 5 points in North Carolina, which would be a pretty large margin for how closely divided we are, that may not be enough to flip the legislature because the legislative districts are still gerrymandered, and the districts that are competitive are ones where they're still very, very closely divided. I mean, they lean Republican, and it's hard to see that those seats will have major swings, because the major swings that you might see, particularly for Democrats, come out of the urban areas, and the major swings you would see statewide for Republicans would come out of the largely rural areas where there was a big Trump turnout in 2016. So there's about 16 House districts and 7 or 8 Senate districts that we think are flippable right now, or competitive, and all of them are just going to be very, very close elections.
So third question from Jane Caldwell. That brings up the census. How is the state of North Carolina doing with the new census compliance and trying to get our people counted so that things can be redrawn as well?
You know, I wish that I could give you a number on where we are on census compliance. I don't remember where we are in terms of what percentage of people have filled out the census. I do know that, so Governor Cooper's Secretary of Administration, Michelle Alexander, has been running the census project for the state. Of course, it's a federal project, but the state coordination has come from her office. And she has expressed concern about completion rates and about the federal government deciding to end the census a month early. And the governor, the end of last week, I think, did petition the federal government directly to extend the census deadline to try and give us more time to get everyone counted. But I think that the manipulation by the Trump administration of the census deadline and the way that they've responded to resourcing the census during COVID has been really disappointing, and I think clearly a part of their efforts to alter the way that representation happens and that voting happen all across the country. Anybody else?
Well, if no one else has any questions, then we certainly do appreciate your taking time to be here today and answer these questions. Thank you, Greg.
Absolutely. I always appreciate talking to y'all. You're always very well-informed audience. And I know I do not need to tell you anything to make sure that you're clear on what the stakes are for the election this year. We look forward to having your support going forward. I don't have an opponent in this year's election, so I will almost certainly continue to represent Orange and Caswell County going into the next session. And so I look forward to working with you, and maybe we can touch base again before we start in 2021 and talk about your priorities and where things stand after the election. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll say to Mary and Sherry, I do know that Valerie sent me an email declining today's meeting. So unless you got something different from her, she's not going to be speaking today. Verla Ensko did accept this meeting previously, but I don't see her here. So I'm not sure if she is going to check in later, or if it fell off of her calendar. So I'm going to send her an email right now asking if she's still planning to attend this meeting today, and we can, Carolyn, we can go ahead and take care of some other business while we wait.
All right. Let's have Nancy give us her legislative report.
Okay. Tom, can you move me to speaker? Okay. Hi. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Okay. First thing is on the federal level, more dental and vision insurance options are going to be available for you. They don't have all the information just yet, but if you're going to think you're going to need dental or vision insurance, check them out. There will be more options. There's a federal retiree COLA watch. It says it's at 1% as of now, but no one knows. A couple of months, one more month to go. Vote by mail. Other issues being national spotlight on USPS after service changes. You all heard about equipment being moved out and overtime being canceled. And then the Postmaster General was speaking. I have links to all this stuff, so you'll be able to find out more. Postmaster General was giving, explained his actions in a marathon House hearing. And he said everything was fine, everything good, they weren't needed. And he guaranteed there wouldn't be any mailing problems with the post office mailing ballots. Guys, I wouldn't count on this. I'd vote early, not necessarily often, but I would vote early and do it and make your plan now to do it early. The federal vision is going to add more plans, but no word yet on the health plans. So we don't have all the information on what the health plans are going to be looking like. Pay raise, other pay raises and other policy changes and other benefits changes. It says, see you in September. Isn't there a song like that? See you in September. Anyway, there aren't any answers yet, but we expect there'll be some by next month, hopefully. And if not, then after the election. Okay, we have the state. The first thing I want to talk about the state, and I'll see if I can add the link to this. Biogen virus, the one that people caught in March, was spread all around the world from that one meeting. That came out of North Carolina, so because Biogen executives went up to that meeting, that's one of the variants on the virus that spread around the world from one meeting. It came here from that meeting. Now, it didn't necessarily come from here, go to the meeting, but it came back from the meeting to North Carolina. As students return to North Carolina, we remain in phase 2. Gyms are closed and bars are closed. Those are the two big things. And movie houses are closed. We're saying they wanted to see what happened when the students came back. More on that later. I have a link to the executive order if you want to see it. Trump encourages North Carolina supporters to vote by mail. He actually had a Zoom meeting with his supporters here in North Carolina, and he said, "Oh, absentee ballots are great. Go get them now and vote by mail using absentee ballots." He thinks there's a difference between absentee ballots and vote by mail, generally speaking. Don't know what he's talking about, but that's what he's saying. County. Early voting locations have been selected for Durham County. There's the libraries, Eno River Unitarian Universalist, Criminal Justice Research Center, Duke University, Durham Tech main campus, the Turner Law Building at Central, the River Church, Durham County Main Library. Yeah, the main library is going to be open, guys, for voting. Greater Emmanuel Temple of Grace, Southern High School, Mount Sylvan United Methodist Church, and Hope Valley Baptist Church are all open for early voting. Hopefully that'll that'll make the line shorter. Local election news. Polling places are being moved to larger enclosures. A lot of places that were located in, let's say, the theaters in the schools are being moved to the gymnasiums. I saw like 3 myself that were going to be moved. So the Board of Elections is trying to look ways to get lock boxes for absentee ballots. They suggested you contact the State Board of Elections to get that moving. Board of Elections will process absentee ballots when they're received, but will not count them until 2 p.m. on Election Day. So they're going to get them, process them, but they won't count them until Election Day. You guys can figure out what that means. Okay. An individual requiring MAT services. Remember, I talked about that last time. That's the multi-party assistance services team. You can get one. There's a phone number you can reach at the Board of Elections, and they will send you help. either if you know somebody that's in a congregate setting, like a nursing home or whatever, there's a form you can use to request one. But if you're an individual that needs help, you call the state, you call the Board of Elections, and they will send you a team of assistants to help you do your absentee balloting. Important things that came from the letter from the State Board of Elections. I read one of these. It was very interesting. This form there's a new form that came out for requesting absentee ballots, but the old form's fine. So don't worry if you've already sent in your request. If the new form comes in, you don't have to do it over again. But the absentee ballot form can be emailed, mailed, faxed, or returned in person to your county Board of Elections. Important tips about requesting a ballot. There's a bunch of them, and mostly is do it early. No special circumstances are required to ask for an absentee ballot. Although the request deadline is 5 p.m. October 27th, the State Board encourages voters to do it early. Your county Board of Elections will begin sending ballots out on September 4th. It is September 4th, guys. I don't know where I got that other date. If you're already requested a ballot, do not receive it between September. Hey, guys, you were wondering about this. If you don't receive your ballot between September 15th and 20th, email or call your county Board of Elections to ask about the status of your request. If you already submitted a request form, please do not submit another one, even if you get one in the mail. Duplicate requests are burdensome for county boards of elections and may delay the processing of your request. COVID, overall case trends as of Monday, August 27th. There are about 6,500 cases. 7-day moving average is 37. That's gone down from the 2 previous weeks. So we're getting less of an increase. Race and ethnicity. Latinas are still overrepresented. Black people are represented proportionately, and white people are underrepresented. So it's still hitting our Hispanic community more than the rest of us. There are some increases in Durham restaurant workers. It turns out the restaurants are now getting hit, which somewhat explains the new Hispanic growth as well. Many people who work in restaurants are Hispanics. So they're not sure what to do about the restaurants. Are really, really scared about this. They want to get faster testing so they can get people that are positive out quicker. But okay, Duke COVID counts. Duke's doing very well on COVID. The first time on August 2nd, they only had 11 people out of 6,000, and they continue to have very, very low numbers. I think it's because they lessened the density of the dorms. There's a couple other reasons why they think it's happening. Duke's doing great, but they are investigating flagrant misconduct. So Duke may not remain in good stead, but they are right now. Turns out there's been some violations, like big parties at sororities and fraternities. Not sure. UNC, NC State University, and COVID. You probably know more than 100 students have tested positive in COVID at now, count them, 10 separate areas. So we have UNC has closed down and is doing virtual teaching as of Wednesday last week. They gave up on the in-person teaching. They're doing virtual teaching as of Wednesday. They have a dashboard, and when I send this out to you, you can get the website if you want to keep up on UNC's COVID growth. And State has done a similar thing. They were having outbreaks as well, clusters. They've gone total virtual. And we have problems I don't know if State's having the problem. And I just heard that UNC Charlotte and I believe East Carolina have both gone virtual as all. So one of them hadn't even opened yet, and they said, we're not even going to attempt to open, we're going to go virtual. So the universities in the area are all going virtual, but we don't know how much they infected areas. Poor Orange County with all the UNC students there. But we don't know what the effect is going to be from them being back for just those couple of days. They've been encouraged to leave campus at UNC, but you know, you guys, we're not that far from Orange County. They do come over here to shop sometimes. So we don't know what the full effect is going to be from the UNC cluster breakout. Anybody have any questions about any of that?
I was going to say, I just have a comment. Duke tested every single student before they came on campus, and they couldn't pick up an ID without a COVID test. UNC tested none and just shoved them into the dorms. And so Duke is, you know, tracing, and only the freshmen and the sophomores are allowed on campus, and you can't be in a building without a mask on.
I have a full list of those changes that why Duke thinks they're doing well, and I have a list of website as well. Jane's right; those are the two major differences. There are some other differences, and I have a link to a. I have a link. You know, there's so much I can talk about on this thing that I have a link.
Yeah, App State's got clusters too. They just had a vote of no confidence for their chancellor for bringing everybody back and insisting in-person learning because they only have one hospital up there, and they've got clusters up there too.
Yeah, I know. State's gotten clusters, and as I mentioned, UNC Charlotte and East Carolina are going virtual even before starting because they don't want to get messed up like UNC and State did. So they used UNC and State as sort of canaries in the minefield, and have decided not to even have the students on campus. How do you like that?
But just like you were saying, just like you were saying, it's hitting the Latino population. The growth is in the 20 to 35-year-old population.
And those are the people that work in the restaurants too. So it's all adding up, guys. It's the Latinos in the restaurants that are causing a major problem now, and restaurants have to close down if they get a positive, so they don't want that to happen.
Now, I'm not advocating for
they're getting sick. I don't mean that they're intentionally causing issues here. They're not doing it intentionally. But they're getting sick and causing people to have to close restaurants.
I'm not advocating for people to volunteer for the Moderna trial. But the Moderna trial is going on at UNC. I think they're looking to get 500 people. They're trying to get people who are in the at-risk category, which we are. But also one of the determining factors besides race and age and gender is, are you going out? In order to test whether the vaccine works or not, they are kind of looking for people that are going to the grocery store and going to get haircuts and stuff and aren't just hunkering that, because they can't test the vaccine if you're doing like me and you're hiding and you're not going out.
But I'm not going to do Moderna, but I'm doing that much, Jane.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, you know, this is going to be the state of things for at least a year. They're not, despite what you're hearing about things being rushed and whatnot, we're not, even if they get an effective vaccine, widespread vaccination and availability would probably not happen until next summer. And that's what a lot of the major companies, Google and other, are telling their people is like, make your child care plans, make your plans. You're going to be at home until July of 2021, because that's just how this is all going to work. Flu shots are available. There is this senior turbo version of flu shots. Tom got one last week. There is some sign up and scarcity, so don't assume that you can just walk in and get one. You know, make sure that you're on a list or whatever you do to get one. But if you're over 65, they recommend the turbo version. If you're under 65, then they recommend that you get a regular flu shot. So I got the regular one last week, and Tom got the turbo one last week. But you certainly need to get a flu shot because you don't need to be dealing with flu and COVID, period. So despite what you're hearing, yes, we've got, I think AstraZeneca is doing their tests in Australia. We've got up to like 6 or 7 that are in phase 3 trials. But, and I believe in Chapel Hill, Pfizer is doing clinical trial on their vaccine. It's slightly different than Moderna. Pfizer has a longer track record of vaccine development than Moderna does. But they're going to be doing clinical trials too in this area. So, you know, stay tuned for that. But, you know, again, what they're looking for is they're supposed to look to approve one. If it is 50% effective, they'll go ahead and approve it. and it's safe. Fauci has said he's hoping for 70% effective. And just like the flu shot, effective could be, well, I didn't get the flu, or I got the flu, but I got a much less serious version of it. And science is doing better in figuring out what all happens with COVID. It's a capillary disease, not just a lung disease, and how to, treat it. But the plasma thing, I'm rather disgusted by the FDA. I'm just going to be very frank. Fauci last week and Francis Collins from IHS basically recommended against approving plasma for emergency treatment because the studies that have just come out are ambivalent. We still don't know who plasma works for, what kind of plasma is best to give you, and when to give you plasma that it's effective. Those are the questions that are out there, and Fauci and Collins said, you really need to study this to figure this out before we recommend just giving anybody anything that with plasma marked on it. Unfortunately, on Sunday, after being berated by Trump, the FDA approved emergency use. And you're going like, well, why does that matter? That matters because if you're just going to give it willy-nilly, you can't study it and you can't figure out whether it's ever going to work, who it's going to work for, and what kind of plasma you should be giving people. That's why it matters. That's why science matters. That's why doing this safely and figuring out that you're not just giving people a bunch of stuff that's not going to work, like hydroxychloroquine. And no, I would not take the Russian vaccine.
Thank you. Peter, do you have something for our treasurer's report?
Yeah, one last question. What are the schools going to be doing this fall? I mean, you're talking about young kids with parents in the 20 to 30-year age group. Seems like they're going to have to do virtual learning.
Durham is already doing virtual learning. So is Wake County, at least for the first 9 weeks. I think it might be most of the year, but I think Orange County's gone virtual as well. Now, there's some private schools that are having in-person learning, but the county school systems, Durham, Wake, Orange County, are all going virtual, at least for the beginning. I think they're afraid to tell them it's going to be the whole school year, but right now it's just the beginning. They say like the first 9 weeks, but you hear it here. I wouldn't be surprised if it went a whole lot more, but right now it's only for the first 9 weeks, they're saying.
So they're going to need computers then.
Yeah, in fact, Durham County is giving out Surface, what do they call, Google Surface or whatever, the Surface computers to everybody. I can't remember what the whole name is, but they're giving out the same computer to everybody and have them loaded with the same programs, so everybody will be on the same
I think it's Chromebooks.
No, I heard it was a Surface, but it could be. But whatever, they're giving everybody the same one so that they all have the same computers and they all have the same software, so nobody's going to be ahead or behind with respect to software. I heard this from somebody.
From an IT point of view, too, that everything's uniform.
Yeah, that's what they're looking to do, and that's where they're going on that. So that's what the counties that are nearby are doing. There's some counties in the area that are holding in. I mean, really far out. The triangle areas are not, but you don't have to get that far out before they have in-house, in-person schooling, and a lot of them are getting outbreaks or clusters or whatever they want to call them. So some of them may start and give up again, just like UNC did, but it's not going to be right away.
So can you go ahead and go ahead, Mary?
Yes. We, for this NARFE meeting, invited a senator and 2 representatives from the North Carolina General Assembly to tell us what is currently happening in the Assembly and what to expect in the next session. And we, as a group, are especially interested in issues that apply to federal employees, federal annuitants, and older citizens of North Carolina. And we have now been joined by Representative Verla Insco. Representative Insco is a Democratic member of the North Carolina General Assembly, representing the state's 56th district, which includes constituents in Orange County. She is a retired health program administrator from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and she has held the office of representative at NC State Representative since 1997. So I will turn it over to Representative Insco.
Oh, so you need to unmute. Can you unmute?
Yep, I can.
Yeah, we got you now.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I've enjoyed the conversation. I had a Dick's Legacy committee, so I was late getting on. I apologize for that. Sometimes I have 2 or 3 of these going at once, but so I can talk a little bit about the September.
Can I ask you to either get closer to your microphone or turn the volume up if you can?
Oh,
Thank you.
I can turn the volume up. Probably. Okay, is that better? Is it that better?
A little bit.
Well, I can hear you all better. That's what I turned up. The September session will be primarily budget, and then we'll probably have to come back later in September for another version when we learn what the federal bill will be and do more there. So I know the committees are meeting now to agree on proposals for this coming session. The reason I'm hesitating is that it's like there are 2 different things to do with regarding money. One is to spend the COVID money, and one is to draft a budget bill. And we're in the middle of a budget year, and we don't have a budget. So this is really the second year we've gone on a continuation budget. And so you all know that a lot of people aren't working, they're not paying taxes, and so our revenue stream is even further depleted than it was by the budget cuts. You know, the tax cuts and the revenue cuts that have been put in place over the last 8 years have taken about $3.5 billion out of our budget. And so this big downturn now will also take money out of the budget. And one of the biggest issues is how will we cut? Where will we cut? How much can we use from the rainy day fund, and how much will we get from the next round of COVID? So this will be primarily a money meeting. There will be some other bills that will come through from various committees that are necessary, but they'll probably be mostly COVID related in one way or the other. So we anticipate that this will be, I've been told that this will be a very short session, 2 or 3 days. That doesn't mean it could go on for 2 weeks. We're not very predictable, but that then we would come back later in the, and at 2 o'clock today, I'm be on a briefing with the governor where he's going to lay out his budget. So he has not presented a budget yet. I'm not sure that he's going to present a full budget. I think he may present his funding priorities to us in the briefing that we do with him, and that then we would take those to our various committee meetings. But Democrats are still in the minority, so whatever the Republicans have the votes to pass the budget they want. The governor could veto something, and so far Democrats have sustained his vetoes. But we really do need to get some kind of budget in place for this biennium. I'm not sure what provisions might be included that would affect government government employees directly. I know everybody's worried about having enough money to get through the fiscal year. So, but I'd be glad to try to address specific questions if you have them about specific programs. Let me just mention that I know that the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Mandy Cohen, is trying to make another push for Medicaid expansion. And that actually would be a good economic boost, because it would bring our tax dollars back into North Carolina and create jobs. So it would be a good, not a fix, but it would be a good support system for the economic downturn that we're in right now. And I'd be happy to respond to specific issues if you can raise them.
Me again, Jane Caldwell. When you're looking at what the big budget drivers are for North Carolina, a lot of it is schools, education, and universities. And I know there's been Republican talk of, well, if you're not going to be in person, we're not going to fund the schools, but you still are funding teachers and education. So what do you see as, obviously the universities are going to take a huge hit of some of the sequelae of what may be on the table to cut the expenses for schools, universities, and not do horrendous damage long-term to all of it?
Well, I know that the Board of Governors asked all the university campuses to turn in 2 budgets, one with a 25% cut and one with a 50% cut. So, I mean, I think we will see some unfortunate decisions having to come down, like people losing positions, having pay cuts, temporary pay cuts maybe, and that'll be, I'm talking about the university level now, but it is a huge hit having the students off campus, a huge economic hit it'll reduce all of the tuition and room and board money that comes through the university. The state, by the way, does not contribute a lot of money to the operating cost of the university. It's probably less than 20%. It's probably less than 15%. It's somewhere in that range. And so a lot of the funding that runs the university comes from grants and other sources of income. So that's probably helpful. But for public schools, the impact rolls down the hill. If we don't have the money, we can't pay the teachers. So teachers may come in with a pay cut. We did that, by the way, before when there was a big economic downturn. I'm not sure which one it was. But we took a 2% cut from all the teachers in the entire system, and then we reinstated it as the economy got better. But I think we should anticipate some cuts like that, and we should know. I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard any rumors coming up about specifics for the university system, but I know that the money is going to really be a huge issue.
So just your views, since the state is an economic engine and it's an employer, as you make cuts to the state, then you have less people able to pay taxes that are employed by the state. So it starts to become a downward spiral. So rather than having the state borrow money or do whatever it needs to do to keep people employed, and paying taxes. Are discussions like that going on, or is it sort of like, well, let's just, cut everybody loose?
Well, part of it will depend on how much the federal government does. The first COVID package, they gave a significant amount of money to state and local government, and that some of that went over into the school systems, including the university system. So when this next package comes down, we'll know a little bit more about that. But and we do have a significant rainy day fund. There are some other funds around that I'm sure that the budget writers are looking to tap into to see what they can do. But I've heard talk from this group already that this may go on for another year or six months to a year, and I agree that that's a possibility. So we can't make money like the federal government can, and so that the federal government really needs to step in and put money back into the economy so we can keep people employed. I mean, the unemployment payment that they did was an economic engine. Really, it kept the economy going. And if you want to kill the economy, take away the unemployment payments, but that'll really make it even worse. So I don't have access to the funds that are available here. I don't have the balance of any of those funds, but I'm sure the budget writers are doing that right now, looking at where we could get the money. We do need to keep essential services going. That's the role of government, is to keep essential services going. I think we are learning about the importance of government, of good government, that there actually is a role for government. And we don't need to drown it in the bathtub. We need to make sure it works for everyone. Yeah, there are, I think right now we're looking at evictions and things. So there's a real, just in the next month or two, there's a real potential for a downturn from people becoming homeless because of unless we have another delay, restricting people from evicting people. And of course that, if you have an apartment and you can't pay your rent and you get permission to stay there, the governor doesn't let anybody be evicted, then the person that owns the apartment complex also has a mortgage and they have to pay their mortgage to somebody else. And so it kind of goes up the hill, and everybody gets hurt. I think it's a real, we're facing a real challenge. And I'm sure that the major leaders are thinking about how to get through this. But I haven't heard the solution yet. We'll get more information. I'm going to get more information today at 2, and then we'll get more information in September. But I'm not behind the scenes. I used to be on the budget committee and appropriations committee, and I really knew a lot more then about where the gaps were and where the excess money was. But I'm not at that level right now. I don't mean to be dire. I do think that we are a nation that's resilient, and that it won't take 10 years to recover, that we'll be able to do it faster than that. But we really do need help from the federal government.
Ms. Insko, this is John Alice. I'm the State Legislative Officer for NARFE, and I just wanted to bring up the extension of the Bailey settlement. Nothing has been happening about that this year for a couple of big reasons, one of which you've outlined is that the money situation is bad, but also because of COVID, we haven't been able to meet with ourselves, much less with the legislators. But I just wanted to remind you that that is still an objective of the state NARFE organization, and that hopefully after the election, beginning of next year's session, we can start to talk about that again.
Good. That is a big issue. I know. So, and I haven't. Thank you for raising it, because I haven't heard discussions about it. But we will need to have a. We will need to be talking about that. I mean, the Supreme Court's decision was pretty specific, so we'll have to comply with that.
Yeah, well, the change would be to make everyone who is retired later than those eligible for the Bailey under the court decision also eligible, and that needs action of the state legislature.
You know, the 2021 session may be a good time to get those bills introduced, just so that you get that issue on the table. It might not be dealt with, but if it gets introduced and maybe debated in a committee, we've got a lot of people that have come that are new to the General Assembly since the Bailey decision was made, and so there are a lot of things that people need to be educated about that we'll have to make decisions about. So that would be a good opportunity to review that.
Good.
So are there any more questions for Ms. Insko?
Well, I would urge you, if you do have questions, you send an email to me, my office, and we can research. We have staff that can research and they know a lot. I mean, we've got a lot of staff, so I can get answers to most of your questions if you have them. I'd be glad to do that. Or Senator Fouché and Representative Meyer also. We all have well-trained staff.
Well, we thank you very, very much for coming and sharing with us, and we look forward to some future conversations about the Bailey, extension of Bailey, and probably some other issues as well, but that is our main one, and I thank you very much. I'm Carolyn London.
Thanks, and thank you for inviting me and for giving me some time to share information with you. I've enjoyed it, so. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I have another meeting at 12, so I will. I'll just look for your next meeting whenever it comes, and Thomas will get that to us. So thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, do we have any? Has Henry left us? No, there's Henry. Henry, did you have any remarks you wanted to make today? I didn't know whether you just wanted to join us or whether you were going to tell us something new.
Nothing specific to add today other than I enjoyed your meeting as I did the last one. And Tom, if you'll send me the link, I'll put it on to the NCNARFE YouTube channel. You can go to www.youtube.com and in the search line, put in NC space NARFE and click enter, and it'll show you all of the different videos that we've already entered, including yours from last month. Thank you.
Thank you. And Henry, I wasn't suggesting that you need to go away at this point. I just wanted to give you an opportunity before we continued. I still have a few remarks about a number of issues, and I didn't want to hold you longer than you need to be here. I want to talk a little bit about membership. As you know, Henry appointed me as a Federation membership chair. I have now been approved, and I will be working closely with Henry and Charlie and all of those people. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to have more challenges than ever this year because everything is being done remotely. I talked with Myra Shabandi, who's the director of the federal Blue Cross Blue Shield program, and she says that some of the bigger places like the VA in Durham, and she didn't give me many others, but the larger installations are not having health fairs this year. They're asking the insurance providers to just send them information which they will pass out to their employees. I asked, of course, if there's some way we could participate in the health fairs. And so we're trying to work out some ideas. And I will need some help from all of you. If you have any contacts, we can put together packages and get them to them on NARFE. And I'm looking forward to having some help from all of you on that. We can certainly get packages together and hand carry them to some of our places like the VA in Durham and like Butner and NIEHS and EPA and some of those, but we need to work with our contacts and work together to try to get our information out there. And Myra did say that if there's any opportunities for us to participate remotely in the health fairs, that she and her consultants will let us know. So I want all of you to think about that. Also, National will be having a membership drive from 1 September to 31 December, and each of you who recruit someone would get $10 from the national headquarters. And there'll be some other other prizes and things that I don't know what those all are at this point. So, and then with that, membership is rapidly decreasing. It's finally hit us. We have not had that so much until now, and I'm not quite sure where we are, but I just gotten the first M112 report in about 5 or 6 months. I'm working that, and we've already had 5 or 6 people reinstate who had dropped. So I'm still trying to get in touch with all of those people. But as of right now, we have 154 members in our chapter, and there are 95 in the area who are national only. So that would be a total of 249. We have lost 2 people, a man named Merritt Long, whom I didn't know. I don't know if any of you did, and George Mebane, who we picked up from the Alamance chapter. He died fairly recently, but he and his wife both came very, very frequently, but he died. Also, I want you to know that Fred Hawkins is recovering from the COVID-19. Fred is not sure when he'll be out and about again, but he's in quarantine until the 28th of August, which is why we haven't heard much from him. So I wanted you all to know that, but he's doing okay now. He does not seem to have had the worst complications that you could have with it, but he's certainly in our thoughts. And I need your help in a couple of things. One is we have a service officer who is, I don't know if Beulah's still with us or not. She was earlier on the phone, but Beulah can no longer do the work of our service officer. And so I need someone to think about that. So if you know of someone or interested in taking over that job, I would like to hear from you. Basically, what you do when someone is deceased is you get in contact with them, the spouse, and see if they need help in getting their insurance or their pensions or anything any issues that need to be resolved with respect to their federal benefits. And of course, we try to send a letter of condolences. If they have a spouse, we try to recruit the spouse. In the case of George Mebane, his wife was already a member, so we wouldn't be recruiting her. But anyway, that is the other thing I need, and Henry will tell us more about what is needed if I don't know. Fred has been on the nominating committee for the Federation for a number of years, and he has now told me he really can't do it. So Henry needs somebody to work on a standing committee for the Federation, which deals with nominations. That would be every year, I guess, and I don't know how often they meet during the course of the year, but it is a standing committee.
Actually, it's only every 2 years because we've now extended the terms to 2 years. So there's a little bit of work in the period of about 4 months out from the convention or conference, and then the final setting of the ballot, and that's it. It's not a heavy lifting position, but we need people who are interested and willing to serve.
So if you or anyone you know might be interested in working on that committee, please let me know, and I will be in touch with Henry about that. But
Carol,
yes.
If I could just add one thing that popped into my mind. The Wilmington chapter, where Tom Jennings is, they are taking an effort to reach out by phone to all of their chapter members just to see that they're all right. You know, when you don't hear from them, you don't know. And I'm going to send out an email to all chapter presidents suggesting the same be done by them. But it's something where if you can get a few people to call, just to check and say, hey, we haven't heard from you and we just want to make sure you're all right. It doesn't have to be a long call, but we do want to express to our members that we are interested in their well-being.
Thank you. We do have a calling committee, and we do that. And I also try to pick 4 or 5 people that I haven't seen for a while and call them, but certainly, I think that's a great idea, and we have been doing that with our calling committee. However, Fred Hawkins is the chair of the calling committee too, and I'm not quite sure where Fred is with that. But I do know that every month we send we do call people who are not who don't have email or don't have computers. We do call them and remind them about the meetings. So at the same time, they could check on them. What I have found very often, though, is that these calls turn out to be long, very long, because people have not talked with any of us or seen any of us for a long time. So they are so happy to hear from us that sometimes the conversations do get pretty long. But
Durham is usually leading the way.
I think that's a good way, a good thing to do. So I'm glad to hear that others are going to do that as well. I seem to have lost you. Can you still hear me?
Yes, yeah. I can hear you.
Okay, I don't see anything on my screen, so I thought I had lost everybody. Now the Alzheimer's Drive is coming up. Helen, are you still there? Helen has probably left us by now. But in September, we send out...
She's still on, but she's unmuted.
Okay. We send all of our members a letter asking for a donation to Alzheimer's. And she's working on those letters. And I think when we get those out, we probably we'll cancel our bulk mailing procedures, because we now send email to everyone who has email with the newsletters, and then the others are being mailed. And we don't have 200 members anymore, which is what we have to have for the bulk mailing. So I guess I need a motion and a vote on whether to cancel the bulk mailing. Peter and Dave Salmon, if you all have anything to say about that, please chime in.
I think when we did a study back a while, the break-even was about 200 newsletters, and now that we're sending the majority by email, that cuts out and reduces the need for bulk mailing. And so what's happening in October is that we pay an annual fee, and this time, well, it's gone up. Used to be somewhere around 205, 215, and now it's going up to $240. And it doesn't make any economic sense to keep up with bulk mailing, and especially when you're only sending maybe 60 pieces of mail on out with a stamp on it. That's about $30 or so. And when you do it 4 times, it's only $120. So that's basically half the bulk mailing fee. So it only makes sense to cancel that fee and do everything by either email or by
snail mail.
Snail mail. The last thing would be is Helen's annual Alzheimer Fund drive, and I believe she sends out letters along with envelopes to mail back contributions. So we'll work with Helen to see what we can come up with, and even that wouldn't put enough savings to keep the bulk mailing permit.
Well, this year the letters will go out before the 12th of October, and I think 12 October is when you told me it would be when you had to renew the bulk mailing permit. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah. Well, we will get them out before the 12th of October for this year, so that would take care of that. So do I need a motion to cancel the bulk mailing permit?
I don't know if you do or not. I'm not a parliamentarian. Parliamentarian. But,
well, the thing, it predates me, and I've been in the chapter 17 years, so I just don't know. I think we could probably make a board decision to just cancel it in October then. I don't think anybody would be concerned about it in terms of, I mean, it deals with our money, but we would be saving money, so I don't think there would be a problem with that.
I would recommend you do it at the board meeting.
You would what?
I would recommend you do it at the board meeting. At your board meeting.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. And then just have a short article in the online newsletter about having done that.
Okay. All right. Now, do we have any other reports that we need to make? Anybody have any reports?
I have the treasurer's report, and basically we have a working balance of $1,853.56, and we've been receiving $30.65 instead of our normal dues amounts, just because National overpaid us during the transition from their old accounting or management system to the new one, and So they're clawing back some money by not sending it to us.
Okay. I wanted to talk about two other things. One is the advocacy actions that we took in August. John Ollis, Charlie Talley, Peter Eckhoff, and I don't know if there was anybody else.
Yeah,
we
Tom
met,
Lake.
And Tom, excuse me, Tom. And we met with Congressman Butterfield on the 8th of August. We discussed the two major bills that NARFE wanted us to push. One was HR 141, which would abolish both GPO and WEP. And the other one was HR 1553, which would make better COLAs for feds using the CPIE in lieu of the CPIW. And we also discussed the postal crisis with him. And he had to leave maybe like the next day to go back to Washington to vote on that. So we were lucky to have had that opportunity with him. He promised us he will make sure that he has co-sponsored or sponsored both of those bills. And I think we can depend on him to do that. He thought that he had already done it, but I suspect he had, but there's been so many bills about WEP and GPO that he may not have gotten to the HR 141, which was the one that NARFE wanted us to ask him to sponsor. So I think he, as usual, he was very interested in what we had to say and was very helpful. I asked him about any advice he might have for us, and he suggested that we keep up writing our letters, keep up notifying our legislators about these particular issues. And so I urge all of you to do that. If you go to the NARFE website, there are already letters prepared there, and all you have to do is kind of customize it to your own needs and discuss your own issues, or you can mail it as it is. And you can do that very quickly online if you have computer things. The other thing I wanted to mention is remember that you need to send in your ballot for the national elections. They have to be postmarked by the 31st of August. You can either mail it or you can do it online. If you do it online, you must have your unique PIN, which was issued in not the NARFE magazine that came yesterday, but I guess it would have been the August one. You had a hard copy ballot there. It's probably a little late to send a hard copy ballot, but you can still do it by email. And I really suggest that you do that. And with that, I don't really have any other issues that I wanted to bring up today. What are our next programs, or do we have those figured out, Mary? And
yes, Sherry's going to talk to you now about that.
Hey,
all right.
Next month is Alzheimer's Month, and for our next NARFE meeting on September 22nd, Reverend Henry Edmonds and Mrs. Lisa Gwyther from the Joseph and Kathleen Bryan Alzheimer's Disease Research Center at Duke University are going to be our speakers.
Wonderful.
We've had those people before, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Yeah, they're very informative. I have just recently seen a couple of articles that I sent to Helen. One of them is a blood test that has biomarkers, or is, I've forgotten what the percentage of effectiveness was, but it can detect Alzheimer's. That's something fairly new, and I don't know exactly where the lab was that has found that, but that sounds like some real good progress. And when our letters go out this year, we're going to try to mention that we've missed our month-to-month raffle with Alzheimer's. So we probably have contributed less money this year than we have in the past, but we certainly want to reach out to everyone to do that, and include some that they might have done at our monthly meetings in their donation, coming back to Helen sometime in September or October. Now, does anybody else have anything we need to talk about today?
I'd like to mention two things. One is Henry sent out a very good summation of the people who are voting for in the NARFE election, and also a summary of all the recommendations for acceptance or rejection of the various
bylaws.
Go ahead, Henry.
It's just the bylaws and resolutions.
And so maybe we could send that out to all our members here in our group.
That would be very helpful, because I don't know many of the people that we're supposed to vote for.
And and when you do go on site, it's quite a lengthy list of bylaws and resolutions, and it was a nice summation anyway. It was helpful.
Just as a matter of record, that was not a summation by me, but it was a cut and paste from the National Bylaws Committee's recommendations.
Okay.
And did you send that to us in an email?
I did. It went out on the national email system to all members, chapter or national only.
Yeah, I think I remember getting that, but I had already.
Thank you, Henry.
I had already voted. I voted as soon as the ballot came, and I pretty much went with what they had suggested, with one exception, and this was personal with me, and it may not be the right one. That was, I rejected the recommendation that we raise the dues. Every time we've raised dues, we've lost a lot more members, and I'm afraid of that. We're losing them so rapidly. But it was pointed out to me that NARFE really needs the money if we want to survive, and it's got to come from somewhere. But I did not vote the way they recommended on that particular one, because I wasn't in favor of raising the dues right now. But that's just me. Others may have difference of opinion.
I have one more thing to add about the national NARFE voting. I'm looking at the magazine, and it says if you mail it in, it has to be received by the 31st, and they recommended leaving at least 10 days. So if you haven't voted and are going to vote, it'd be much better to do the online voting and not try to mail, because your ballot might not get there in time.
Thank you, Dave. I knew that we could do it still by email, but I didn't know about the mailing. It's taking 5 days sometimes for things to get from one zip code in Durham to the other. So the mail has really slowed down, and you're absolutely right. We want them to be counted. So if you can do it by email, do it.
Carolyn, if I could add one last thing. I will, when Tom sends me the video, I will edit it and cut off the front and end, so it's just relevant to the chapter meeting. But I would appreciate if you could give me some language that you would want on the back end of it. I'll put your chapter logo on the front end, but on the back I want to have something that says you can reach the president or the co-president or whatever you want by emailing to so-and-so or calling so-and-so. Whatever you would like, I can add that on as a add-on to the end of the video and then post it on YouTube.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you very much. Anything else?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the video is just wonderful, and thank you so much for doing that, Henry, because in this way, people that are not able to actually come to the meeting or forget to come to the meeting can watch the entire meeting, which is great because they can see the presentations like we had last month, for COVID and for Blue Cross Blue Shield. This month they can see the presentations from Greg and Verla Insco. So I'm going to also post those on the Facebook page because it's just links for people to go to the YouTube videos. So thank you so much for doing that. We have a video archive of our meetings now, so we'll have to make sure.
Could we have something about Join NARFE?
Yeah, we can put whatever.
We're going to need to put out as much publicity as we can about becoming a NARFE member, and I'm not sure where all the best places would be, but
well, that should go on the last page of information for our monthly meeting. And you and I, Carolyn, can work on that, on all that stuff we want to put on there, which will be links to our Facebook page for our chapter, links to NARFE.org, to the Federation, et cetera, and that all those places will have information about how to join NARFE. And our Facebook page has specific information about how to join our chapter. So,
if you still have the links for the first two meetings as MP4s, send them to me, and I'll add it to the channel.
Okay. Great.
Right, and I think in all of those places we need to have something about joining NARFE.
Absolutely.
Everywhere we can. Somehow we have to meet. Somehow we have to get members the information about us. If not, as Henry said, maybe it was not Henry, somebody said, we'll die. We're losing members so quickly that we're just going to have to do some heroic, some kind of heroic recruiting. And I'm open to all ideas.
So have we got anything else, or are we done for today?
Well, I'm going to put together packages, and if anybody, recruitment packages, if anybody can think of where to take them and to whom, just let me know. And I think I could start with the VA. I have some contacts over there. The VA in Durham has announced they will not have a health fair. So if we can take some packages to the retirement coordinators or to anybody in HR, I think we ought to do that. I don't know
how much you want in supplies.
Excuse me, Henry, I didn't hear.
Tell me what you need in supplies and I'll get it up to you.
Okay, I have quite a few left over from last year, and I think I'm just going to use what I have and put those together and start taking them out there. I don't have to wait till health fair season, And any place that will let us, I mean, if they're going to do any kind of virtual health fair stuff, I will try to get us in there. And get us involved as well. Okay, but if that's all, then we will adjourn. And thank you, everyone, for participating.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.